Do you know what one of the absolute most important skills you're gonna need to develop as a freelance writer is if you wanna be successful? It's how to ask questions. Unsuccessful freelance writers, here's what they do. They get a new job, they get a new client, they get a lead, and they're like, sweet, let's go, let's start, let's do this. I'm ready, just tell me what I gotta write about. Let's write. And then inevitably, a lot of the time it doesn't work out. There's a falling out, there's miscommunication, there are problems. The successful freelance writer, they do the opposite. They say, okay, cool, let's work together, but I've got some questions. That's the key. The successful freelance writer knows exactly what questions to ask and is not afraid to ask them before they start the job. And that ensures that everybody's on the same page and you get off to a good start. So that's what we're talking about today. 7 questions you have to ask before you start any freelance job. Trust me, if you don't ask these questions ahead of time, you're gonna find them out later on the hard way. Let's do this thing. Question 1. What is your budget and how much am I going to get paid? Whenever possible, I always try and get them to tell me what their budget is before I set my rates. That way, I'm not selling myself short and it gives me the potential to make more money in the long run. And you need to make sure you talk about these financial questions up front because it can save a lot of time, energy, and frustration later on if you're not on the same page. If you say, hey, what's your budget? And they're like, $50, then you're probably gonna be like, peace, I'm not doing that, I'm sorry. If you ask what their budget is and they're like $10,000, then you're like, cool, we can work with that. And if it's somewhere in between, then you figure out what works for you. But understanding what the budget is upfront is going to make it a lot easier to decide if it's worth moving forward with the job. The second question you have to ask before you start a freelance job is, what are your content needs? How many articles or newsletters or pieces of content do you need written? How many words do they have to be? How many rounds of edits do you go through? Every client is going to have a different set of needs. Sometimes a client might just need one article. Sometimes someone might need an entire blog's worth of content. It's important to understand the scope of the job so you can figure out how to prioritize it within your own schedule. It's amazing to me how many freelancers don't figure out the scope of the project early on. They get so excited by the fact it's like, cool, I got a job, sweet. I don't know what the job is, but they want me to write something, cool. Ask questions, figure out what they want you to write, how much they want you to write, and their process for how you are going to give them that writing. Doing that is going to allow you to set your expectations, allow you to set your schedule, allow you to figure out your budget. And when you have that information, it allows you to be a much more successful freelance business owner. Third question you need to ask before you start working with a freelance client is, what's the timeline? Are they expecting 1 blog post a week? 1 newsletter a month? Are they expecting you to write 3 pieces of content a week? And what's the turnaround time for that content? Are they gonna give you a week, 2 weeks, a month to do it? Or are they expecting you to turn things around in 24 or 48 hours? It's gonna vary a little bit on the client. If you are working for, say, a newspaper and you're covering a sporting event, you're gonna need to turn that around very, very quickly. But if you're working for a B2B business and they put out 1 blog post a week, then it's probably not necessarily going to have such tight turnaround times. But you need to understand what those turnaround times are so that you can plan your schedule accordingly. Basically, you just need to make sure you and the client are on the same page because you don't want to think you've got 2 weeks for something and they're expecting you to do it in 2 days. I feel like I'm saying this stuff and it all kind of feels like common sense, but it's amazing how many people don't ask these questions and run into these issues. So if this feels like common sense, then good. That means that you're probably asking these questions ahead of time and you haven't run into these issues. But if you have run into these issues, then, take this to heart. All right, the fourth question you need to ask is one you might not think about, but can be super, super valuable. And that's asking if the client has a writer's guide or a style guide for the type of content they want. Often this can include who the audience is, what the voice should be, the length of content, basically all the pertinent information that's going to allow you to have guidelines for the type of writing that you're doing. So larger organizations or people that are used to working with a bunch of different types of writers will often have at least a few pages of this type of style guide that's going to make your life so much easier. So you want to make sure if they have that that you get your hands on it. And better yet, if they don't have a style guide, then these are all questions you should be asking. Who is your audience? Who should I be writing for? What's the tone? Would you like it to be educational? Would you like it to be witty? Would you like it to be dry and scientific? Sometimes that's the type of tone that you need. But making sure you have that information so you can write your article and your content appropriately, gonna be super valuable, and it's gonna really cut down on the edits down the line. All right, the fifth question you should ask is, what does the writing and submission process look like? This is essentially just going to dictate what your day-to-day is going to look like when you're working with this client. So, for instance, the submission process. Are they going to give you a headline? Are they going to give you a headline and a set of keywords? Are they going to give you none of that? Are they expecting you to come up with ideas? Are they going to give you a whole outline that you can then work off of? And then once you have that information, do they want a rough draft first? Do they just want you to submit the finished copy? All of these are questions that are going to allow you to have more information as you're creating the content and know what to expect. So for instance, if you know they want a draft first before you submit the final piece, then you can save a little bit of time going through all the particulars and fine-tuning every little thing to make sure that, your content is right on line with what they're thinking about. The last thing you want to do is spend hours polishing every single period and dotting every single I, only to find out that you were way off base to begin with. So get clear on what that whole submission process looks like so that you can plan your writing accordingly and save time in the long run. If you are submitting a draft first, how long can you expect between submitting the draft and getting edits? As you start working with more clients, you're going to learn that it's a little bit of a balancing act for where you put your time and attention. So if you're working on an article and you have to submit a draft and you know that you're going to have to come back to it later on, it's important to know what the turnaround time is. Can you expect it in 24 hours, or is it going to be a week or two before they get back to you? Knowing that will just allow you to plan your schedule and be more efficient with your time. All right, sixth question you need to ask before you get started working with a new freelance writing client is, how are you gonna get paid? A lot of times it's just via PayPal. Sometimes you need to submit an invoice. Sometimes you don't. Questions to ask are, do I need to submit an invoice? When should I submit an invoice? Do I submit an invoice after every article? Do I submit it once a month? Once every 2 weeks? Figure out what works for that company. Also, if it's a client you're going to be working with on a regular basis, I would push to see if you can do direct deposit as your payment method, because if they pay you via PayPal, often there's going to be 3% fees associated with that, and if it gets to be a big client, those fees add up, and usually you're going to be the one to pay them. So finally, the last question you need to ask before you're starting with a new freelance client is, what are the next steps for onboarding? Is there a contract that needs to be signed? When's the official start date? Are there any special tools the company uses, like a content management system, that you're going to need to get signed up for and up to speed with? Knowing what these things are ahead of time, it's really important so that you don't get stuck with unexpected tasks that you're not expecting to do. The last thing you want to have happen is your start date rolls around and then you're like, oh, I have to learn how to use Asana and I don't know how to do that. And then I got to report into this other person that you never even mentioned. All that to say, just understand what's expected of you from an onboarding process and get clear on as much information as you can up front so that when the time does come to start, you can hit the ground running. Seriously, so many times I see people just be too afraid to ask these questions up front. You get a new client, you're excited, and you don't want to ruin things by asking questions that might frustrate or annoy your potential client. But trust me, they will be more frustrated and more annoyed if you don't ask these things, and then they become issues later on. The more questions you ask up front, it makes you more professional, and it's going to allow you to do your job better. So please, please, please do not hesitate to ask any new client these questions to give yourself as much information and as much clarity on the job as you can possibly have. My name's Sean Ogle. I'm the founder of this thing here at Location Rebel, where we teach you how to make money with your words on the internet. Whether you want to be a freelance writer, a blogger, an affiliate marketer, whatever it is, if that's something you're trying to do, then we very well may be the channel for you. If you like this video, then hit the thumbs up button, hit the little notification bell so you're notified every time we got a new video, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Go to locationrebel.com/hi, get our free 6-day course that's going to walk you through all the steps you need to have in order to build a successful freelance writing business. And while you're doing that, go check out this video right here. I have a feeling if you liked this one, you're probably going to like this one as well. So hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace. Still too far away from the camera. I can't do the, just